Okay, so today we're going to jump into something pretty fascinating. It's called the Reggio Emilia approach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, you hear these words and it's like, what is that? Some kind of pasta dish.
Right?
I don't even know how to pronounce it half the time.
Yeah.
But
It's a mouthful.
it's a mouthful. Yeah, and I think a lot of times when we think about educational philosophies or theories or approaches, we think, oh my gosh, that sounds so complicated.
Yeah.
But really, it's about taking a step back and looking at how kids learn in the most natural way.
Yeah.
And really thinking about how we can nurture that love of learning that kids have from the get-go.
Absolutely.
So let's break it down a little bit.
Yeah.
What is Reggio Emilia and where did it even come from?
So Reggio Emilia, it's not a method.
Right.
It's not a curriculum. It's more of a philosophy.
Okay.
And it comes from post-World War II Italy.
Okay.
And
So post-war, like people are trying to literally rebuild everything?
Exactly. They're looking for a new way of doing things. And they're saying, the old ways of educating aren't working. We need something fresh.
Right.
We need something new.
Yeah.
And so it emerges from this sort of desire for something different in education.
And it's specifically from the town of Reggio Emilia, is that right?
It's named after the town where it originated.
Okay, so they're like, we need a fresh start.
Yes.
Let's try something different.
Exactly.
So was there like a particular person or event that kind of spearheaded this movement?
Yeah, there's a psychologist by the name of Loris Malaguzzi,
Okay.
and he's kind of considered like the father, the grandfather of this movement.
Okay.
And he believed that, children weren't just empty vessels waiting to be filled with knowledge,
Right.
but that they are strong and capable and resilient and full of potential.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, that right there is such a different way of thinking about kids, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not about filling them with information, but it's about really like igniting that.
Right. Spark within them.
Right. And trusting that they have something to offer.
Yes.
That they're not just these blank slates that we have to write on.
They come with so much already.
Yeah.
They come with their own ideas and their own ways of thinking and being in the world.
So he really believed in the power of the child.
He did.
As an individual. To learn and grow.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how does that translate into an actual, educational approach?
So one of the big things about Reggio Emilia is that they believe that children have 100 languages of expression.
100 languages?
100 languages. So we think about language usually as the spoken word.
Right.
But in Reggio, they believe that children communicate and express themselves in many, many different ways.
I love that. So they're not just limited to, like you said, the spoken word.
Exactly.
They can express themselves through art, through music, through movement.
Through building.
All these different, all sorts of ways.
Ways of being in the world and making meaning.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about my own kid, and she loves to dance. She's not even 2 yet. But that's like her way of communicating.
Right.
And showing me what she's thinking and feeling.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's powerful. And so in Reggio, they really honor all those different languages, and they provide opportunities for children to explore and express themselves in all those different ways.
So it's not just about sitting at a desk and filling out a worksheet.
No.
It's about giving them the freedom to explore and discover.
Exactly. It's about creating a rich and stimulating environment where children can really dive in and engage with their learning.
That makes so much sense. So you're saying the environment is really important in this approach?
It's crucial. In fact, they call the environment the third teacher.
The third teacher. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more about that.
So if you walk into a Reggio Emilia classroom, you're not going to see rows of desks and a teacher standing at the front lecturing. You're going to see a space that is full of light. Natural materials, things like wood and plants. And the space is designed to be inviting and engaging and to really encourage exploration and discovery.
So it's not just about making it look pretty.
No.
It's about creating a space that actually supports learning.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. So like you said, lots of light, natural materials. What else makes the environment so special?
Well, one of the key elements is that it's designed to be flexible and adaptable. So the furniture can be moved around, the materials are easily accessible,
Okay.
and there are different spaces for different types of activities.
So like a space for quiet reflection, a space for group work,
Right.
a space for
Building.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So the environment really is like an extension of the learning itself.
Absolutely. And it's constantly evolving and changing
Hmm.
based on the needs and interests of the children.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So you've got this amazing environment. You've got this philosophy of honoring the child's 100 languages.
Yeah.
Where does the teacher fit into all of this?
Right. That's a great question. So in Reggio Emilia, the teacher's role is quite different from what we might traditionally think of.
Okay.
They're not the says on the stage.
Right.
They're not standing up there lecturing and imparting knowledge.
Okay.
They're more like a facilitator,
Mm-hmm.
a co-learner.
A guide on the side.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so they're working alongside the children,
Mm-hmm.
observing them, listening to them,
Documenting their learning.
document. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so documentation is a huge part of the Reggio Emilia approach.
Yeah, okay.
And it's basically the process of carefully observing and recording the children's learning.
Okay.
And that can take many different forms. It could be photographs.
Mm-hmm.
It could be written observations,
Okay.
transcripts of children's conversations,
Wow.
samples of their work.
So it's like creating a portfolio
It is.
of each child's learning journey.
Yes. And it's used for a lot of different purposes.
Okay.
It's used to help teachers understand the children's thinking,
Hmm.
to plan future experiences, to
Yeah.
communicate with parents,
Right.
and to really make the learning visible.
That's so cool. I mean, it's almost like turning the classroom into a living museum
Yeah, in a way.
of the children's work and their process.
Yeah, and their thinking.
So it's not just about the final product.
Right.
It's about the whole journey.
Your process.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So we've got the environment, we've got the teacher as a co-learner, we've got documentation. What else makes this approach so unique?
Well, one of the other things that I find really interesting is that there's a strong emphasis on community.
Okay.
So parents are very involved in the Reggio Emilia schools.
Okay.
And the community as a whole is seen as a resource for learning.
So it's not just like dropping your kid off at school
No.
and then picking them up at the end of the day.
It's much more of a collaborative effort. Everyone's working together
Yeah.
to support the children's learning.
That's beautiful. It takes a village, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of the core principles of this approach, but I'm curious, how does it actually work in practice?
Yeah.
Like, what does a typical day look like in a Reggio Emilia classroom?
Well, there's no such thing as a typical day
Oh, really?
because it's all about following the children's interests.
Okay.
So the curriculum is emergent.
Mm-hmm.
It's not pre-planned.
Okay.
It's based on what the children are curious about.
So like a teacher might come in with a plan,
Mm-hmm.
but then the kids are like, no, we want to learn about dinosaurs today.
Exactly. And the teacher's like, okay, let's go with that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, that requires a lot of flexibility from the teacher
It does.
and a lot of trust in the children.
Yes.
But I can see how that would be so powerful for the kids to feel like their voices are heard
Absolutely.
and that their interests are valued.
Mm-hmm.
So the day might start with a group gathering where the children and teachers come together.
Yeah, maybe they share what they're curious about.
Okay.
Maybe they revisit something that they explored the day before.
Mm.
And from there, the day kind of unfolds organically.
Okay.
There might be time for exploration and play.
Mm-hmm.
There might be time for small group activities. Or
Right.
there might be time for individual projects.
Wow. So it's really about creating a rhythm
Hmm.
that works for the children
Yeah,
and that allows them to really delve into their learning in a meaningful way.
exactly. And that brings us to another important aspect of the Reggio Emilia approach, which is the idea of progettazione.
Progettazione. Okay, you're going to have to break that one down for
Okay,
me.
mouthful.
It is, yeah.
But basically, it's the process of planning and designing the learning environment and experiences,
Okay.
but it's not done in isolation.
Yeah.
It's a collaborative process that
Mhm.
involves the teachers, the children, and often the parents as well.
So everyone's working together
Yes,
to create a learning experience that's meaningful and engaging.
absolutely.
Wow, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not just about one thing.
Yeah.
It's about creating this whole ecosystem
Mm.
that supports the child's development.
A holistic approach.
Yeah, I'm really loving this deep dive into Reggio Emilia.
Mm.
It's making me rethink a lot of my assumptions about education,
Good.
and it's giving me so many ideas to try with my own kid.
That's great.
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to touch on one more thing that's really central to the Reggio Emilia approach, and that's the atelier.
Ah, yes, the atelier. This is a very special space.
Okay, tell me more.
So the atelier is essentially a studio,
Okay.
a dedicated space for artistic exploration and expression.
So it's like an art room.
Kind of, but it's
Yeah.
more than just an art room.
Okay.
It's a place where children can experiment with different materials and mediums and really delve into their creative processes.
So it's not just about like making pretty pictures. It's about using art as a way to learn and grow.
Exactly. And there's usually a trained artist
Oh, wow.
called an atelierista
Atelier.
who works in the atelier,
Yeah.
and they're there to support the children's creative explorations.
So it's like having a mentor,
Mm-hmm.
an artistic mentor.
Yeah. Yes.
That's amazing.
Yep.
I'm picturing this space filled with all sorts of interesting materials and tools.
Yeah.
Like paint and clay and wire and wood and
The fabric.
fabric, yeah. And the children are just free to create
Yes.
and explore
Mm-hmm.
and express themselves.
And the atelierista is there to guide them and to encourage them to think outside the box.
So it's not just about teaching them how to draw or paint.
Mm-hmm.
It's about helping them to use art as a language,
Yes.
to communicate their ideas and their understanding of the world.
Absolutely.
Wow, this
Yeah.
is fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm already feeling inspired just thinking about this space.
It's a magical place.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive into Reggio Emilia,
We have.
but there's still so much more to explore.
There is.
And in the next part, we're going to delve deeper into some of the challenges and benefits of this approach.
Yeah, we'll talk about how it's being adapted in different contexts.
Okay.
And we'll discuss some of the criticisms that have been raised.
Right, because no approach is perfect.
Exactly.
And it's important to look at all sides of the story.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into Reggio Emilia.
Mm-hmm. So we were talking about how there's no typical day in a Reggio Emilia classroom.
Right. Like it's all about following the kid's lead.
Exactly. And that can be a little bit unnerving for some people.
Yeah, I can imagine, like, especially if you're used to a more traditional classroom setting.
Right, where everything's planned out in advance.
Yeah.
You know, you have your lesson plans and your worksheets, and
Right.
everything's kind of laid out.
It's all very structured.
Yeah, but in Reggio, it's much more fluid.
Mm-hmm.
And that requires a different way of thinking about planning.
Right. And a different way of thinking about assessment, too.
Absolutely, because if you're not following a set curriculum, how do you know what the children are learning?
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's not like you can just give them a standardized test and say, okay, you've mastered this skill.
Right, exactly. So assessment in Reggio is much more about observation
Okay.
and documentation.
Mm-hmm.
It's about really paying attention to what the children are doing and saying.
And how they're interacting with the materials and with each other.
Exactly. And then using that information to inform your planning.
So it's like this ongoing cycle of observation, reflection, and planning.
Yes. And it's all very individualized.
Mm.
So you're not assessing children against some external standard.
Right.
You're assessing them based on their own growth and development.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, every child is different.
Mm-hmm.
They learn at their own pace. They have their own strengths and interests.
Exactly. And Reggio really honors that individuality.
So it's not about trying to fit all the kids into the same mold.
No, it's about creating an environment where each child can thrive. I'm really starting to see the beauty of this approach.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
It is. But I'm also wondering about the challenges. Like, is it realistic to implement this kind of approach in every school?
That's a great question. And to be honest, it can be challenging.
Okay.
It requires a shift in mindset, not just for the teachers, but for the administrators,
Right.
the parents.
Right, the whole community.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And it can also be resource intensive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you need to have a well-designed environment.
Right.
You need to have trained teachers.
Yeah, and materials and
Material, yeah.
all of that stuff.
It's an investment.
So it's not something that can just happen overnight.
No, it takes time and commitment.
But I imagine the rewards are worth it.
Oh, absolutely. When you see children engaged in their learning, when you see them excited about coming to school, when you see them using their creativity and their imagination to solve problems,
Right.
it's just incredible.
So even though there are challenges,
Mm-hmm.
there's also this incredible potential. Yes, and I think that's what keeps so many educators passionate about Reggio Emilia.
It's like a beacon of hope
Yeah,
in a sometimes very standardized and test-driven world.
absolutely.
Well, this has been such an enlightening conversation.
It has.
I'm feeling really inspired to learn more about Reggio Emilia and to see how I can incorporate some of its principles into my own life.
That's great to hear. And in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to talk about how Reggio Emilia is being adapted in different contexts around the world.
Okay, so we're going global.
We are.
I can't wait.
It's fascinating to see how this approach is being interpreted and implemented in different cultures and settings.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how those different interpretations play out.
Me too. You know, as we wrap up our deep dive into Reggio Emilia, it's really got me thinking about how we can shift our perspective.
Yeah, like how can we apply these ideas in our own lives, even if we're not teachers or working in a school setting?
Right, because it's not just about classrooms. It's about a way of being with children, a way of seeing the world through their eyes.
Exactly. It's about nurturing that innate curiosity that they have
That sense of wonder.
and valuing their unique perspectives.
And it's about recognizing that they're capable and competent learners.
Right. Like they have so much to teach us
They do.
if we're willing to listen.
Exactly. And I think one of the most powerful takeaways from Reggio Emilia is that learning should be joyful.
Oh, absolutely.
It should be an adventure.
Yeah, it should be filled with exploration and discovery.
And that's something that we can all strive for in our interactions with children.
You know, whether we're parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, teachers, we can all create those kinds of experiences for the kids in our lives.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be complicated.
Right.
It can be as simple as providing them with open-ended materials
Yeah.
and giving them the time and space to explore.
And asking them questions
Being curious about their thinking.
and really listening to their answers.
And most importantly, trusting them.
yeah, trusting that they have something valuable to offer.
Absolutely.
This has been such a rich and rewarding conversation.
It has?
I feel like I've learned so much about Reggio Emilia
Me too.
and about myself as a learner and as a parent.
That's wonderful to hear.
And for our listeners who are feeling inspired to delve deeper into Reggio Emilia, I encourage you to visit www.karosclan.com and subscribe to the newsletter for more resources and inspiration.
You'll find lots of great information there.
And be sure to explore more episodes of the Golden Scarab podcast for fascinating insights into a variety of educational approaches and philosophies. We have so much more to share with you.
We do.
So if you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on future episodes. Until next time, keep those sparks of curiosity burning bright.